Farmers in Nebraska have harvested 27% of this year's soybean crop, on pace with the state's 5-year average. As we've told you previously, the post-harvest window can be a valuable time to sample fields for soybean cyst nematode. University of Wisconsin Extension soybean and wheat specialist Shawn Conley was on UNL's East Campus last week to discuss his soybean production research. We spoke with him about the difficulty SCN presents to soybean growers.
Yeah, the challenge we're running into with growing soybeans with soybean cyst nematode is the fact that Pi88788, which is the common trait used for genetic resistance, is slowly starting to break down. Greg Tilka at Iowa State University showed some good data, basically showing how that erosion is occurring in that trait. So given that over 90% of all the genetics that have resistance to SCN carry that trait, we see a big challenge in the years ahead.
How many farmers are using that trait?
Basically, every farmer that's growing soybean these days that is in an SCN area is using that trait. So I would say this is just a rough guess, but 80% of all the acres are using that trait.
How prevalent is SCN in Wisconsin?
So in Wisconsin, SCN or soybean cyst nematode is prevalent in every single county where we grow soybeans. It's very similar to what we see here in Nebraska. So it's a big challenge, and not that it's in every single field, but it's in every single county where we grow soybeans.
What's the answer then?
There's a couple answers to do this. First of all, understanding if you have SCN. A lot of growers they haven't even looked at to see if they have an issue. The next solution is rotations. Looking at a prolonged rotation, either more corn, throwing winter wheat in, though the winter wheat price isn't very attractive going into this growing season. But also there are some seed treatment options that are available to growers today.
Do you agree that there are correlations to soybean cyst nematode and sudden death syndrome?
So interestingly enough, we published a paper recently showing that there is a correlation, but I think it's been a little bit over dramatized. What I mean by that is you can have SCN in a field, you can have SDS in the field, and they're both combating it, or they're both affecting soybean yield. However, when you put the two of them together, you basically see this larger effect on yield loss, and that's where the problem is.
What do you mean by that, a larger effect?
So there's basically an interaction with the two of those pathogens once they get into there. So you may have 5% yield loss, 10% yield loss with SCN by itself, 10% with SDS, and you put the two of them together, that's where you get in the 15 to 20% yield loss when both pathogens are present at the same time.
Are there genetic varieties in the future or seed treatments that companies are working on to try and help with this problem?
Right, so there are a couple seed treatments available to growers. There's both ones within Syngenta and one in the Bayer platform, so there are some options there. I think the biggest thing that we're looking for, and we've been telling us there's a GM trait coming down the pipeline, but that's 15 to 20 years. So in the meantime, we have to look at different management strategies such as rotations, using seed treatments, altering genetics, and looking at some of these alternative forms of SCN resistance.
Can you expand on how effective those seed treatments are?
So the variability is pretty intense between those. So again, we've done a lot of data on that, and again, the response is going to be driven by the environment. What I mean by that is you don't see a very big yield response in a high yielding area, or when you have a lot of water. Where we tend to see the biggest response to these seed treatments are in areas where there's drought stress. So unirrigated parts of Nebraska, Wisconsin staying near ground, higher pH ground, that's where we tend to see the biggest response to these inputs such as seed treatments.
Growers in Nebraska can sample their fields for SCN and get a free analysis thanks to a partnership between the Nebraska Soybean Board and Nebraska Extension. You can contact your local Nebraska Extension office for a sample bag and form or to learn more.